Another high school had a program for the young kids with disabilities to participate in showing animals, and came back, which is something I never would have had the sensitivity to think of in high school, and said, hey, why don't we start a program like that for now? So now I've got this, my elementary school age oldest granddaughter, the one that with Downs, is showing pigs, and she's all about pigs, and it's so fun to watch her out there. But they're both so well treated in that school. One's pretty high function, the other's very low function. But that public school does a wonderful job because they love those kids. And then, you know, we had a daughter who was in private school who's I don't think you would call it disabled in any manner, but because she had a brain tumor, she had vision issues. And although that private school wasn't set up to deal with kids with things with brain issues, now in case she's listening, she's a brilliant student and working on her PhD right now. But in private school, that school made accommodations for her, and because she had difficulty, it took her longer to take tests because of the vision issues, and eyes were jumping all over the place, and they made accommodations. I only say that to say that we keep hearing that private schools don't reach out and try to help kids who are struggling with different things with their families. And I just know for a fact they do, where they can. If they don't receive someone in, it's because they literally do not have the resources. But I know those private schools, if they can find any way to, and just common sense tells you that too, when you've got a family that has maybe a child with learning struggles, and they've got 3 other kids in that private school, they try to find a way to do that. And whether it's a small rural school without all the resources that a big district might have, or whether it's a small private school, those schools try to love those kids and take care of them. So I don't worry so much about the idea of ESAs to private schools and the thought that they're not going to take kids. They're going to take any kid they think they can educate and help, because they're going to love them. And then also just wanted to remind myself of this morning, but and I was actually benefited from this, but we've had an ESA type program, Money Follows the Student, for I think at least maybe 40 years in Texas, maybe 50, and it was the Texas Equalization Grant Program for colleges. And we started that in Texas. I understand the history is that the state was short on money, and our state universities were full, so somebody said, hey, why don't we, just like you just mentioned about foundations, and why don't we set up a program to help fund kids? The money will follow the child. It'll go to any private university they want to go to, and then those schools are going to have their own foundation programs and other endowments and things, and it'll help offset the rest of that tuition as well. And that has been an ESA type Money Follow the Child program that's been involved in Texas at the collegiate level with tremendous success and bipartisan support for I think like 50 years now. And I actually, when I was going through college as a police officer, a couple of semesters was able to get money through the TEG when I was going to Dallas Baptist in the mornings and working nights. So we've been doing this. This is nothing unusual to Texas. Private schools and public schools helping kids with disabilities, it's always a struggle. Helping kids with special learning issues, whether it's just vision or whether it's a disability of types, they love those kids and they try to do that. So I'm real comfortable with this whole thing that we're laying out this morning.
Thank you, members. Any other questions of the sponsor? Okay, now get started with public testimony now. The floor is now open on committee substitute for House Bill 100. Chair calls Christy Rome, Chloe Sykes, Diana Long, Stephen Alamon. Christy Rome, Chloe Sykes, Diana Long, Stephen Alamon. And if you could state your name, who you're with, and position on the bill.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Christy Rome, and I'm testifying on behalf of the Texas School Coalition against this version of House Bill 100. We have been supportive of House Bill 100 throughout the session with the hopes that the amount of funding in the bill would grow to meet the needs of students and teachers in our state. But this bill does not look like the bill that many of us have supported. In fact, some of us may not recognize it. The harm caused by the ESA language in this bill far outweighs and will outlast the sections of the bill that actually help public schools. With the impact of inflation at a rate of 14.5% Since the basic allotment was last increased, schools need a meaningful increase. While this bill offers a $50 increase, that is not the $900 to $1,000 increase that inflation would dictate that schools need. This bill also does nothing to extend the formula transition grant deadline. And without an extension of that deadline, we have schools in our state who will face major funding cuts and have to lay off staff in their districts if that is not addressed in some bill this session. So we thank you for taking all these things into consideration as this bill moves through the process. We hope that we can work with you to make this a better bill.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Chloe Latham-Sykes. I'm the Deputy Director of Policy at IDRA, and I'm testifying in opposition to the substitute for House Bill 100. And thank you for the opportunity for public testimony. As we said 2 months ago in this room, IDRA does oppose any private school voucher proposal that takes public funds from public schools without any public transparency or accountability. This proposal does have the nominal increases to public school funding, which we would support and had supported through this legislative process, even though we advocate for substantial investments in public education, but does come with a $500 million price tag for the private school voucher proposal. The attached brief to the testimony that I've handed out is from Public Funds for Public Schools, just published last week, and it outlines evidence-based and legal concerns for private school voucher proposals in Texas, including education savings accounts, such as the one proposed here. These programs are overall nationwide. When you look at any research they have conducted or compiled, they are expensive, they're wasteful of public dollars, they can lead to school segregation, and they do not lead to increased educational achievement or opportunities for students. Also, I want to mention IDRA does support protecting students' civil rights and equal access to strong public schools that serve all students. And in that vein, we do condemn this late-night, last-ditch proposal to move this legislation forward. We've heard from many families that we work with, educators, students, and parents who do not want this type of proposal and are not able to be here today because of the nature of the timing. And I know it's sensitive, and I know it's on a deadline. And for that, we hope the power and promise of public schools can be maintained as supporting all public students and families. And we urge this committee to table this last-minute proposal and reconsider investments to serve all our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Diana, if you could state your name, who you're with, and position on the bill.
Sure. Hi. Thank you, members. My name is Diana Long, and I'm testifying against HB 100 on behalf of the Texas Legislative Education Equity Coalition, TLEAG. My testimony today focuses on deep concerns regarding the establishment of the Education Savings Account program. With the 88th legislative session coming quickly to an end, it is disheartening to witness the unwavering efforts to pass legislation that would divert precious resources away from public schools, hindering the very foundation of equal opportunity and access to quality education that our nation holds dear. TLEAG does not support any mechanism that inherently takes public money away from public schools under the false disguise of parental choice. Under a voucher plan, Texas families will be left with fewer choices, poorly funded public schools, and a diminished public education system dedicated to serving all, including those with greatest needs. Public funds should go to public schools that educate and care for and raise all Texas children. The pursuit of vouchers disregards the immense value that public schools bring to our communities. Public schools serve as the bedrock of our democratic society, fostering diversity, tolerance, and social cohesion. They provide a common ground where children from different backgrounds come together to learn, grow, and appreciate one another's perspectives. By diminishing the resources available to public schools, we risk weakening this essential fabric that holds our society together. Furthermore, the promise of vouchers as a remedy for education fails to acknowledge the complex challenges that plague our education system today. Rather than pursuing quick fixes, we must focus on long-term sustainable solutions that address the root causes of educational inequity. As esteemed members of the Senate Education Committee, you have been entrusted with the responsibility to shape our state's education system. I implore you to reevaluate the pursuit of vouchers and instead shift your focus towards strengthening and investing in our public schools. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Stephen?
Good morning. I'm Stephen Alaman with Disability Rights Texas. I'm here to testify against the committee substitute as I've been privy to a copy just a few minutes ago. With regard to students with disabilities, why are we opposed? First and foremost, I think that most people don't understand that even under current federal law and state law, students with disabilities already have access to private education. If a school is not able to meet their needs, they have the option to place a student in a private facility. So we already have access to promising programs. We don't need ESAs. Another reason why we're opposed to this substitute is because of, I will give credit that there are many great other special education finance reforms included in this committee substitute. They are necessary because we are underfunding public schools in meeting the needs of students with disabilities by the tune of $2 billion annually. We want to see any money that would otherwise be diverted to ESAs instead given to public schools where they deserve and need those funds for our growing public school population. Again, that's $2 billion that the state special ed allotment is underfunding school districts and what they're spending on students with disabilities. So we really need to invest in those promising reforms first before the luxury of an ESA account for any student, including students with disabilities. So with that, I'll just conclude by saying again that we regret that there's many promising things in here, but with the inclusion of the ESA option, we are opposed to the committee substitute. Thank you.
Senator Menendez.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Alaman, I'd never meant to imply, and I want to thank you for your continued advocacy for folks with disabilities. You and I have worked together for a long time on lots of different issues, and I just was trying to make sure that if anybody were to try to access a family with disabilities, that they would have the capacity to do so, and the protections, really, more than anything, those are what are important to me. I'm going to ask the question to the panel. You know, I think that Senator King made a good analogy, but I'm not sure that it's an exact analogy, an appropriate analogy. On the TEG grants, my understanding, the state obviously does not have an obligation to provide free and appropriate education for higher education like we do public education. So they're definitely not necessarily analogous. And my understanding, too, is there are federal requirements placed on TEGs, and then there's the state can vary in how much they offer TEGs every year. We would not be able. Is there anything in this bill that says we can offer more or less in terms of year to year on these ESAs? Did you see anything? Did you notice anything? Do you see them analogous, TEGs and these ESAs? No, we can't. The people can't hear you nodding or shaking your head.
I'll answer KHOU Sykes with IDRA. I have heard that comparison, and I heard it last week on Monday in the House Public Education hearing as well, between TEGs and higher education scholarships that are state funded or grants that are state funded, and the education savings accounts proposals here. And I don't see those as analogous. What could be potentially more analogous is what Mr. Alaman just outlined, which is there are some public funds that can go to support students' needs in other settings because the state isn't paying for another type of private educational system or setting. Similarly, in higher education, as you said, Senator Menendez, the state is not tasked with supporting the system of higher education. In fact, it is largely supported by students and tuition pairs and other types of grants and donations and a whole other source of federal and private and other and individual revenue streams. So that is not totally analogous. I mean, I think that what we have is we have other state supports that are focused on supporting students, but to compare it to higher education is a completely different type of funding system and different type of responsibility of the state. The state has a constitutional responsibility to fund public schools, K through 12 public schools.
Yes, and in an equitable way, and this would definitely mess with equity, would not. Stripping some of these dollars out and some of these students out. And then someone made a question, would this help schools that are failing? Because I hear it's bad to trap them, so we're going to let some students leave whose parents are engaged, but then the rest of the students can stay in the failing school, and it doesn't matter because their parents didn't care enough to apply for the ESA if this were to pass.
Well, Senator, that's our concern with regard to students with disabilities is that the removal of that student and the way our enrollment, either attendance or enrollment-based funding works, that's discounting money then from the public school system, which is already being underfunded with regard to special ed services. And so it just puts us more in the hole for the remaining students who are sticking with public schools. And so, again, the main thing about ESAs is that you have to de-enroll from public schools. So the public schools lose money, the student loses their legal rights. Whereas now in the current system, if you need access to private education, you get to keep your legal rights and stay under the shield of what we've devised for students with disabilities.
Well, thank you for your answer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator West.
Yeah, and I apologize for just getting had something else to do, but I had some questions of the sponsor, not of any of the persons on the panel.
Thank you. Thank y'all for coming up. Members, any other questions of our panel? Sorry. Okay. Do you mind if I go ahead and call the next one just so they can start coming up here?
While I'm asking questions of the
Yeah.
sponsor.
Yeah.
Okay.
The chair calls Chandra Villanueva, Anna Rush, Sabrina Salcedo, and Ray Pienziak. And Senator West had some questions for the sponsor.
Senator Creighton, we are looking at the House bill as engrossed, is that correct? That's correct. 100, okay. Would you agree with me that as relates to House Bill 100, there's nothing in there about ESA programs?
Yeah, we're looking at the House bill as engrossed and then a substitute as well.
Well, I mean, the substitute is what you're substituting, right? Mm-hmm. But you would agree with me that HB 100 as engrossed has nothing in there about ESAs. Is that correct?
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Okay.
we have many new provisions.
You would also agree with me that there's nothing in there about, is there anything in there about teacher retirement?
No, we handle that in the budget.
Okay. So there's nothing in there about the teacher retirement, nothing in there about ESA. There's compensation in there about for educators. Okay, so you would agree with me that ESA is a different subject altogether than what came over in House Bill 100, correct? That's a different subject.
Yes,
Okay.
as are the teacher rights provisions and other additions to the bill.
Okay, so teacher rights are not in the bill either.
We've got that in the bill, yes.
Okay, but was not in the bill when it came over from the House.
That's right. We've added that through substitute language.
Okay. What is the rule as it relates to, if you know, what is the rule? If you have a engrossed version of a bill coming from the House, can you add on to that bill different other subject matters?
Well, we're taking this back through, a public hearing and we're substituting language. So
I understand
I'm
that.
under the assumption that we can, we can have this bill continue to evolve, yes.
So you're not held to the four corners of the bill as it came over from the House in terms of making, substituting and making amendments and things like that? You can go outside the four corners of the bill?
Well, that's what we're doing here in this.
I understand that's
this
what we're
hearing.
doing.
Yeah.
I understand that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
But I'm asking you, can we do that?
Yes, we do it every session.
We go outside the four corners of the bill?
We, yes, this late in session, we go back into hearings, we bring substitute language to bills that come over from the House, correct?
Okay, but that substitute language is normally within the four corners of the bill, though, right?
Are you talking about germaneness?
Yes.
Or you gotta just say it straight up.
Well, I just want to make sure. Well, I didn't know the word. Okay.
Yeah, you know the word better than I do.
Well, yes, germaneness. Here's the deal. It's always been my understanding, and I'm subject to a correction, that if a bill comes over engrossed, that we're held to the four corners of that bill. And we can't go outside of the four corners of the bill, but I mean, we can make a committee substitute that deals with issues within the four corners of the bill. Anything outside that is not germane.
Well, the overall legislation as it relates to funding education, that we could talk about, how education is funded in the ways those dollars reach a public school classroom, and we can talk about how education is funded for the specific needs of the kids that need that education, specifically tailored to what their parents are directing the dollars to serve them on. So yes, I believe under the auspice of school finance and just managing education dollars for different outcomes, it certainly fits.
It's also my understanding, based on previous rulings by the parliamentarian, that you got to look at the content of the bill to make a determination as to whether or not what's being considered is in fact germane. And I find no sections in the bill as engrossed the House Bill 100, and I hadn't had a chance to go through all of it, maybe something in there. Nothing in here that deals with issues of ESAs in terms of financing. Do you find anything inside?
I'm looking at it different than you are, obviously.
Obviously.
Yeah. But I definitely believe all of this falls under ways to finance education in Texas.
But you would agree with me, there's nothing in the substance of House Bill 100 as relates to public financing, public school financing, that deals with ESAs. You would agree with that, right?
I believe that the bill is broad enough to handle many different subjects related to financing education outcomes.
You'd agree with me that the methodology determined germaneness is whether or not the substance, whether what's being proposed is consistent with the substance of the bill, right?
I believe we'll have a ruling on it.
We sure will. Okay. All right. Thank you.
And Senator West, I wasn't around for this, but in 2017, in this committee, Senator Taylor added SB 3, Special Needs Education Savings Account, to House Bill 21, I believe. So I made it back to the House, but at the end of the day, that's up to the parliamentarians. So, members, any other comments? Okay, we'll start with Chandra Villanueva. If you could state your name, who you're with, and position on the bill.
Good morning, committee. My name is Chandra Villanueva. I'm with Every Texan, and we are against HB 100. I am very disappointed that y'all took a pretty decent, comprehensive school finance reform bill from the House and turned it into a vehicle to move vouchers, which are completely unnecessary and do not help the 5.3 million kids who are in our public schools. The basic allotment, the main funding for our schools, has been stagnant for 4 years. We have an opportunity this session to actually increase that funding to make meaningful investments in our schools, and this committee has chosen not to. We need at least $1,000 in a basic allotment increase to make up for inflation in the 4 years that funding has been stagnant. HB 100 as passed from the House had some provisions to start adjusting for inflation so that we wouldn't have to come back every 2 years asking for more investments in our public education system. This bill strips that in favor of vouchers, which do nothing but divide our schools and our communities. We need enrollment-based funding. Over 300,000 students are not funded every single year because we fund on attendance instead of enrollment. This is all about choices, and the choices that you all are making today are the wrong choices. We need investments in our schools. We need to address the basic allotment. We need to make sure that our schools are strong. Our schools are not failing. You are. Thank you.
Thank you. Ray?
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Ray Pianzik. I represent the Ag Teachers Association of Texas. I'm testifying on the bill, although I'd rather be in some other way. There are parts of the bill that I do not like and I don't think align with the support of public schools like ESA, but I do appreciate you fixing the CT allotment issues by keeping it the same as current law as I can see it. Also appreciate that you are touching somewhat on teacher pay raises, advanced math allotments, and TIA. And with that, I'll close.
Thank you. Anna, if you could state, Sabrina, if you could state your name, who you're with, and position on the bill.
Sure. My name is Sabrina Gonzalez Saucedo, and I am speaking on behalf of the Texas Council for Developmental Disabilities, registering on the bill. TCDD is established by state and federal law and is governed by 27 board members appointed by the governor. And the council's purpose in law is to encourage policy change so that people with disabilities have opportunities to be fully included in their communities and exercise control over their own lives. I have come before this committee before to talk about our position on the bill, and I will, on related bills, and I will do so again. TCDD has two main positions in relation to the committee substitute. To begin, TCDD recognizes and thanks Representative Ken King for taking up some of the important special education funding reforms that were offered unanimously by the Commission on Special Education Funding Reform. This includes transition to a service intensity-based special education funding formula model, which would benefit students with disabilities and their families by ensuring special education students receive the services that they need. And as such, TCDD finds this recommendation, the transition to an intensity-based model of special education funding, to be consistent with our mission, guiding principles, and public policy priorities. With that being said, TCDD has significant concerns with the establishment of an ESA program for students. These apprehensions are extensive, and in relation to students with disabilities, we are apprehensive, with our main concerns being the loss of legal protections for students and their families, the lack of academic and student outcome accountability in the private sector, and the segregation of students with disabilities. The National Council on Disability has several recommendations for state leaders on how to create a more protective ESA program for students with disabilities, but none of those recommendations are in this bill. We hold that an ESA would have a harmful impact on students with disabilities and their families.
Thank you. Anna?
Hello, my name is Anna Rush. I am the Executive Director of Academics and Accountability from Del Valle ISD. I am in support of HB 100 without the vouchers. I want to thank Representative Ken King for HB 100. I'm in support of HB 100, the version that passed the House. It is a great bill. Districts across the state are in desperate need of funding to keep up with inflation. I and we do not support adding the vouchers provision. I'm 100% in support of parental choice. Parents already have a choice, including parents of F-rated schools. Across the state, parents of F-rated schools have the option to go to a different school with transportation paid. It's already in statute. It's Public Education Grant PEG program in Texas Education Code Chapter 29, Subchapter G. Public funds should go to public schools. Parents already get tax exemption from the federal government for each child they have. Individuals without children do not get anything back. Yet everyone's taxes, go towards a common good to fund public services such as public education. In relation to parental choice, parents don't have a choice to opt out of STAR. Parents don't have a choice to decide whether their student can be tested with paper or online. It passed both chambers with a cap of 3%. What about the other 97% of parents? True parental issues have not been fixed. And if you truly want to fix outcomes of students, fully fund public education, measure what matters in the accountability system, bring back 2019 STAR format, the current format isn't working, and let people that know what they're doing do what they know what to do without any more mandates that have not been supported by research nor wanted across the state. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Any questions for our panel here today? Thank y'all. And the chair recognizes Senator Lamontia as present.
Mr. Chairman. Yeah, as you
Senator Creighton.
as you call other witnesses forward, I just wanted to remind the committee, and in a combination with this effort in the budget, we've put $9 billion of new money into public education. So that is beyond the total state budget allocation, not education budget, but the total state budget allocation for 11 states in the United States of America. So as we put $9 billion of new money into public education, we've also increased the basic allotment in this legislation, as well as teacher pay and as well as comp ed. We have $1/10 billion in comp ed that can also be used for teacher salaries separate from that. So as we talk about public education having enough money, and as we reach a plateau where the state is very close to or at 50% of the state's share of public education for the first time since I worked special sessions in the 72nd regular first, second, third, and fourth special sessions on school finance in 1990, 91, and 92. I think we're in a historic place to lift up public schools greater than ever, support our public school teachers greater than ever, and separately provide our parents with options that they deserve. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Menendez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Creighton, appreciate your comments and your hard work. We're getting lots of questions from lots of folks back home because they're not seeing the bills passed. They haven't seen the budget. They're not privy. So if you could help us on the committee, give us a breakdown of that because, a lot of folks are asking, per capita, how much are we addressing? How much are we putting in? They're not seeing. They wish we could have gone from average daily to enrolled. There are a lot of things that people have not seen. And so what they're seeing, though, is like, we're proposing lots of different things, and then they see us keep proposing this $500 million ESA thing, and so they're seeing something that goes counter to what they think that is happening. And so if we're wrong, if the investment is made, then just get us the information. We'd be happy to help share it. But it is a difficult subject. But at the end of the day, these are our community schools. And the reason these ESAs or vouchers have never passed is because these are the biggest equalizers and opportunity makers in every single one of our neighborhoods across the state of Texas. Because there are 5.2 million kids. There are just not enough private schools for all 5.2 million kids. So I appreciate you, and I just think we have to understand that we may just have a difference of opinion, but we're going to continue to work together.
Well, and Mr. Chairman.
Yep, Senator Creighton.
Senator Menendez, your points are excellent, right? I mean, the budget is just coming together in final form. The public has yet to see us land the plane and really study how the budget works and our funding strategies. They have to assume that it's not good before it's proven to them that it is good. And this is their opportunity to be here in a public hearing to give feedback, which is the way that this outcome should be driven by community, right? So I just appreciate your perspective, and I think at the end of the day, when all of these strategies come together, our public schools will see that we've lifted them up like never before. Thank you. Thank you for your perspective.
Senator West.
And Senator Creighton, if you know, how much of the $9 billion is for property tax relief?
Well, there's I believe 4. So there's compression,
right.
And then there's also historic dollars in total and in percentage that are being driven straight to the schools. There's a basic allotment increase,
right,
and then a percentage of the new money has to go directly to the classroom because we've seen a trend where new dollars from the state have not ended up in the classroom. And so we've got a guardrail in place on that end. But I think all in all, the total is going to be very impressive for schools.
Sure, I'd say that. And I think that we need to make certain that as we paint the picture for the citizens that are not in this room, because most of the people here are normally in the room, exactly what that means in terms of the state continuing to shoulder the responsibility of public education in the state of Texas.
That's right, and we're lifting up our retired teachers like we should be with the COLA increase.
Right.
We're putting $1 billion into school safety, and we have all these initiatives that are coming together that will be historic. But as Senator Menendez mentioned, I understand that on guard during this process, you're either helping to shape the menu here or you're on it. And so the testimony is very valuable to our committee process and all the way through as we kind of narrow in on our timeframes and our deadlines. It's high pressure. We feel that as well. We'd love to slow down and pause and take much more time. But our founders were very wise to make sure that we are working with urgency. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator West and Creighton. Call the next witnesses here. The chair calls Michael Lee, B. Moorhead, and Charles Luke. Michael Lee, B. Moorhead, and Charles Luke. Michael, we'll start with you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Michael Lee. I'm the Executive Director of the Texas Association of Rural Schools. I'd like to change my position from on to against this bill, please. And we're against the voucher portion of the bill. We feel that there are other spending priorities that need to take place before we start spending money on vouchers. Please know that we were very appreciative of the increase in the small and mid-sized adjustments for our school districts. We're not but this morning we were kind of, you're reducing those increases to help pay for the vouchers. And we feel that we would like for that money to go to that. I will tell you, I have my pulse on rural Texas, and rural Texas is against vouchers. When I read the article in the Republican primary, I knew that it was going to get a favorable response from those who were voting. However, when I go to the coffee shops and I say, are you for taxpayer money going to private entities without accountability and without transparency, the answer is 100% no. Also, the 4-day week, I've given you a survey that we have of our schools. I'd appreciate if you'd put back the $7,000 that Senator Nichols had in whatever bill that was, 23 something. Some of your top performing schools are 4-day weeks. And this is a local decision, local communities and local boards, and appreciate that you allow that to keep happening. So with that, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. B?
My name's Bea Moorhead. I'm the Executive Director of Texas Impact. We oppose the substitute to House Bill 100 specifically because of the voucher provision. Texas Impact represents Christian, Jewish, Muslim, and other traditions, many of which, in fact, currently operate private schools that could receive funding under the ESA provision that was added to the substitute. They oppose the provision because enduring religious freedom is more important to them than a potential quick buck. Also, they oppose it because they affirm the need to fund our public schools so that all students have the opportunity to benefit. In a session when the state is enjoying a generational surplus, it is astonishing that you would instead prefer to extract a portion of existing funding, creating an ongoing obligation that will then prove even more problematic in years when our economy struggles. Our members oppose vouchers under any name, and they certainly are discerning enough to see that this last-minute addition is calculated to minimize their participation in a discussion that goes to the heart of our state's commitment to all our children.
Dr. Luke?
Chairman, members, thank you for your time today. I'm Charles Luke, and I'm here on behalf of the Coalition for Public Schools. We oppose the committee substitute to House Bill 100 on the basis of the ESA-type voucher as well. We appreciate your comments, Senator Creighton, about the work that the committee and the members have been doing with regard to school finance. Schools are facing a double-digit inflationary increase, and at the same time, we're talking about spending $500 million on an ESA voucher that, as you've heard, many believe is not popular. One other issue that we have is the accountability issue. This bill would funnel tax dollars to private and religious schools without requiring them to meet curriculum and fiscal standards required of neighborhood public schools. And then another issue is separation of church and state issues. Our concerns are that this bill would actually harm religious liberty by moving toward the establishment of a state religion, possibly. And finally, as a parent of a son with spina bifida, I have grave concerns about the removal of federal protections, IDEA protections for students with disabilities. Over the years, I spent many, many times invoking my federal rights with school districts in ARD committees dealing with protection for my son, and I'd hate to see that go away for any other parent. Thank you for your time.
Senator King?
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I understand completely, and I've heard stories too about how many parents have had to struggle to get the school district to step up on their child with disabilities and with special needs, and I understand that. But don't you think, I mean, it seems like we're kind of calling parents, I don't like we're saying they're not good parents. They're not smart enough to be good parents. I mean, the way I'm looking at this, if I'm a parent with a child with disabilities, I'm going to look at my options, and I'm going to be loving enough and smart enough to figure out which the best option is for my child. If it's a private school that's got a special program for autistic kids or a special needs, then that's where I'm going to want to put them. If it's a public school like where my two granddaughters are that's got the best program available for them, that's where I'm going to put them. And if it's a charter school that may be available in my area that is best, but I think that's what we're missing here. Parents are not going to go, oh, I'm going to go put my kid in a bad private school that has disabilities and my child's going to suffer there. Parents are really pretty smart. And don't you agree that a parent's going to look and go, wow, what's my best option? Is it this private school over here, or is it this, maybe that's even a special needs focus, or is it a charter school that's over here, or is it the public school that's over here? And parents are going to make that decision. They're going to have the freedom to make that decision. That's why I just think we just discount how really smart and capable and loving and good most parents are. And with that, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Would you like me to respond?
Thank you, Senator King.
It's up to the chairman. You're certainly welcome to, from my perspective.
If you'd like to.
Yeah, I appreciate you. First of all, you were my state representative for over 20 years. So thank you for that and your work. I don't think it has a lot to do with how smart the parents are, how good the parents are necessarily all the time. I feel like I was a smart and a good parent, and I had my son in the places where I felt were best for him. But at times there were decisions that were made that I didn't agree with, and I always had the opportunity to have federal law backing me up. I could call an ARD committee meeting as a parent. I participated in those meetings. I participated in the development of his IEP. And so I'm not questioning parents here. I just think that is a protection. I think of it in terms of a child safety seat, you know. I'd hate to see that go away for people. Thank you, though, for the question.
Yeah, all this bill is doing is trusting Texas parents, you know, and that's what it's all about. So, yeah. Members, any other questions of our panel here? Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on for or against House Bill 100? One more. Did you register?
We can give you one after.
Thank you.
Hi.
State your name, who you're with, and position on the bill.
I am Dr. Susana Carranza. I'm testifying on my own behalf, and I oppose the committee sub, specifically because vouchers. Somebody mentioned before that taxpayers without kids have no choice. The only thing we have is the choice to believe that public funds should stay with public schools. So I don't think, people can go to private schools, they just need to find a different way to fund it. Business can fund that. I also am very concerned about the issue of separation of church of state, because a large number of private schools are religious schools, and it really opens the doors without the safeguards to start really preaching to whatever religion and create a single religion, and then removes freedom of religion to all, including freedom from religion. So I oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions?
Can I just
Senator
ask a
King?
question on that? Because, again, it kind of gets back to that. And thank you for being here this morning. And I'm sorry we almost missed hearing from you, but thanks for making sure you got to testify. But I think it gets kind of back to that same decision before. You know, some parents would like their kids to be in a school where they have the freedom to pray at the beginning of every day, and maybe offer Bible course as well and things like that. And if those parents put their kids in a private school and they feel like there's being things taught that they, from a religious nature, that they don't want taught, they'll simply have the option of putting those kids in a charter school or a public school that's nearby. That's why I kind of struggle with that, because it doesn't seem like, it seems like what you were testifying to is this going to force religion down onto the kids whose parents may not want them to have that. But it's just the opposite. It's giving parents the option, if they want to put them in Trinity Christian Academy, because they got a great STEM program, or they got a chance to play football there that they wouldn't get in a public school because the public school's too large and the kid's not as athletic as the competition, or maybe they want to put them there because they like the smaller class, or maybe they want to put them there because they want them to have a Bible curriculum and pray at the beginning of every day. And if they don't want that, then they'll put their kids in a secular-based private school. If they don't want that, they'll put them in a public school. I mean, that's what I get so confused on when I hear that argument, because all you're doing is saying, hey, parents, you have some options here, and feel free to exercise those options. But there's no one, but if someone doesn't want their child to be in a school that has a Christian worldview or whatever worldview that may be, they just won't put them in that school. And that's where I get so confused on this.
May I
Please.
comment back?
Yeah, please.
So people have the choice to go to religious schools. That's not what I oppose. What I oppose is to use tax dollar money to support that. That is where the separation of church and state goes. Because if you're diverting money, public money, money that came from my taxes, to fund something that it goes to a large extent to religious schools, that is the problem. I don't have a problem with religious schools. I don't have a problem with parents that choose to put their kids in religious schools because they chose that. What I have a problem is with tax dollar money going to fund schools that don't have, that are allowed to be religious schools. And that is where the problem is.
And I understand you can personally feel that's a separation of church and state issue, but you understand that the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled it's not recently, and of course the history of the founding of our nation supports that as well. But thank you very much. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Thank you for coming today. Members, that's the last witness we have registered. We'll now close public testimony on committee substitute. Okay.
Sorry, it was the last minute. I thought this was going to go on longer.
Okay, and I think, sorry, we've got a couple more. I think that just dropped a card. If you've done so, please come to the front.
Mr. Chairman, while they're coming up, may I address?
Yes, Senator
King, I wanted to, you brought some good points about the TEG, and I wanted to do a little research, and I think you heard me with the witnesses. I mean, they're close, but they're not exactly similar. One's a $500 million program, TEG, we only appropriate $90 million, and we're not, a Constitution doesn't obligate us to send kids to higher ed, and so, and I hear you, and I think the issue that I have is, I don't feel like we have created the best public school system for all kids. And the problem is that, sometimes we measure the parents, we think of the parents as the parents we grew up with, or our neighbors, our friends, the people we know and work with. But sometimes at the beginning of the school year, I'll go knock on doors in apartment complexes to have to tell parents that the school year is about to start and their kids need to show up. And that's in schools sometimes where you have a high lack of attendance, and some parents are working 2-3 jobs, or maybe they're not familiar with the system, or they dropped out and they don't see the value. And so what I want to do is, and I hope that we all do, and is before we siphon off $500 million, is to make sure that we have a public school system that will allow every child, even the child whose parents aren't around, maybe he's a foster child, maybe something happened, parents are in the criminal justice system, that child has an opportunity to get the best education possible. And that's why I'm still opposed and frustrated. But I get what you're saying, and I think it's just difficult. If we had a history of fully funding our public schools and building a system that was so robust that they had every opportunity, I think I might feel different. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Nope. Mr. Chairman, can and Senator, I get exactly what you're saying and agree with you completely. One of my daughters who was teaching in a school district, she would tell me of, she was teaching high school, and she would tell me of going to kids' homes because at age 16 and 17 they were dropping out because their parents wanted to work or they just wanted to work. And frankly, I was a little bit nervous that she was going, to homes that she didn't know anyone and everything, but she's just going, couldn't get hold of anybody, knocking on the door. Don't let him drop out. Don't let her drop out.
Yep.
Let me see what we can do. And we have wonderful teachers like that work those kids so much. And I agree with you. I don't know the answers to all these things. I know we can't legislate for every contingency, and we can't make unloving parents be good parents or struggling parents be good parents. But I just think at the end of the day, where we can give options, sometimes it's a better thing. And you're right, TEG is not a perfect analogy. All analogies end at some point. But just kind of trying to make the point that we've let some money follow the child. And it's interesting in the Texas Constitution because it says we're supposed to provide a efficient system of public education. I don't know that they were thinking that means through 6th grade or through 12th grade or through college or what. So I don't know.
That's a good point.
But thanks for your good comments, and I think we're all kind of on the same page, just trying to figure out how to get there.
Late in session, lack of sleep. Yeah, thank you.
Members, any further questions? Okay, let's go ahead. We'll start with you. Of course, your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Allman. I'm the Executive Director of a Texas Catholic Conference of Bishops, and we're in support of House Bill 100. One of the things we appreciate about this bill and the way that you've addressed it, now that we've had a chance to review it a bit, is that you've dealt with school funding in an integrated manner. We have always said in all of our testimony that we support a strong and robust, well-funded public school system because, as many of the witnesses said, the vast majority of Texas children will be educated in public schools. And Texas depends on a strong public school system for the education of those children. All of us depend on that. It also gives parents the right and responsibility to have a more active and engaged role in choosing the location for their child education and the environment of their child education. It also addresses the special needs issues, which we think are critically important. So we're pleased to be here today in support of this bill, and we feel very confident that we can be a part of implementation of the ESA elements.
Thank you very much, members. Any questions? Good morning.
Good morning.
Go ahead.
My name is Laura Colangelo. I'm the Executive Director of the Texas Private Schools Association. We represent the 920 private accredited nonprofit schools in Texas, and we are in support of HB 100. I just want to respond to a few things that we've heard this morning. One is that 97% of private schools are interested and ready to implement a program like this. I heard that perhaps some of our religious schools were not, but I can assure you that 97% of our schools as a whole are ready and willing. They would like to allow more families to have the opportunity to take advantage of a private school education if that is what they want and need. We heard a little bit about students losing protections under IDEA. Just want to remind you that private schools operate under contract law. That means the family and the school sign a contract together. The school outlines what they can provide for that child. The family decides if that is what is best for the child or not, and they sign and they operate under contract law, an equally valid level of accountability there. IDEA is very important for public schools, students in public schools. Private schools operate differently, but we need both. And then briefly, the tuition, the average tuition, the median tuition across the state is $9,831. Catholic schools did an analysis, it was a little bit less, and there is already millions and millions of dollars of scholarship money available to supplement any tuition that is more than the $8,000 that is outlined in this bill. So I think that is about it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We'll ask questions after the panelists finish testifying. Go ahead, sir. Your name for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Joshua Houston, the Advocacy Director at Texas Impact. Texas Impact is...
I'm sorry, I didn't get your last name.
Oh, Houston, like the town.
Houston, okay. Thank you.
And Texas Impact is the membership organization for the mainline Protestant, Jewish, and Muslim denominations in the state of Texas. Our testimony is limited to page 103. The language on page 103 is pushing the boundaries of a court case from last Supreme Court's term, Carson versus Mackin. In that case, the Supreme Court said that Maine couldn't require non-sectarian curriculum. The scope of that decision has yet to be fully adjudicated. Page 103 goes even farther than that decision. So even if the Supreme Court ultimately says that all things are permissible with state money, that does not mean that all things are beneficial from a policy perspective. In our membership, there are denominations with private schools that affirm all people, including LGBT persons. There are denominations within our membership that believe that life is from first breath, not just conception, and of course everywhere in between. And while we appreciate that the language is equally applicable, we would point out that it is still very broad. And, while the issues I mentioned are divisive enough, there are less mainstream faiths out there with very different beliefs and practices. We would point out that historically, the public money for sectarian teaching has been a very divisive thing in American history. It sparked James Madison to write the Memorial and Remonstrance. The New York legislature dealt with this in the 1807, Massachusetts in the 1820s. Philadelphia had literal riots over the reading of the Bible in the 1840s. And here in Victoria, Texas, in the 1890s, we had a big fight between the Methodists, Lutherans, and Catholics in Victoria County because the Methodists did not have a private school, and their children were forced to attend either the Lutheran or the Catholic one. There have always been three viewpoints in American history. One, that public schools should teach our faith, whatever that may be. The second one, that we need money for our private schools so that we can teach ours. And then the final one is that government shouldn't be involved at all, and our members will
Thank
be
you
in
very
that
much.
category.
Thank you, Mr. Houston. Go ahead. Yes. Well, I was going to do questions afterwards.
Sure, but did he say what his position was on the bill, though?
No, he did not.
Oh, I apologize. We are against the bill.
Thank you, Senator West.
Hi, my name is Catherine Kaiser, and I'm a parent in a large suburban district. We already have 14 charter schools actually within our boundaries, so there's quite a bit of choice, especially in our district. We are really struggling financially. I've been attending our district level budget meetings where we're basically going to be in a deficit next year, and our budget CFO has basically planned for a $300 increase in the basic allotment, which is now down to only $50. And so we're having to cut classes, we're having to cut educational assistants, library assistants, fine arts, we're having to consolidate. So if there is $9 billion in extra funding for public education, I have yet to see it, and I've been paying pretty close attention. I've seen about $5 billion so far. So opening up the door to vouchers would just diminish things even worse for us. And then I also wanted to speak to what Senator Phil King was saying earlier about the special education in private schools. From what I've seen so many stories where private schools have not been able to accept all students, and even the Oak Creek Academy that Brad Buckley brought in to the House Ed Committee, I went on to their Google reviews and saw so many people that were not accepted to their school that was even a highly specialized school for autism. I think it should be noted that a lot of these special therapists are billed to medical insurance. That doesn't come out of education. So if you want to talk about expanding medical, that would be great to help those students. But ultimately, most of those kids end up coming back to public school anyway. And so I feel like that's where our emphasis should be, is actually increasing funding to public education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions for this panel? Senator Menendez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate you all being here and providing your testimony. One of the issues that have come up time and time again, and I'm pretty sure I know your answers, but just to clarify for the ladies representing Catholic schools and the private schools, whether it's a community-based public or a charter public school, they have the accountability measures, and we have the safety measures and all the. I think in the past you all have testified that if there's going to be any state funding, whatever form it goes, that you're not interested in having any state requirements or strings. Is that an accurate statement?
We operate under an accreditation system, so there are 19 accreditation commissions that make sure that the school is accountable to the parents in every way possible. Financial, facilities, governance, mission, curriculum, teacher qualifications, they look at every part of a school. And the assurance among those 19 and the TEA is they are meeting or exceeding the standards of Texas public schools. So they're accountable to their accreditation commission.
Right, but I understand that y'all are all accredited, but the question is not that. The question is the same standards that we're holding public schools accountable to with the TEA and those testing and all those things. Y'all are not interested in any of that.
Actually,
correct?
I think to elaborate on Laura's answer and to answer this question, the accreditation system is that accountability, and it is recognized by the TEA. The TEA would not allow our accreditation to continue if our standards did not equal or exceed public school standards on curriculum, on financial audits and accountability. There's 18 or 19 measures in which TEA is involved in assuring that our accreditation standards are meeting those benchmarks.
You feel comfortable that your curriculum and accreditation is as good or better than?
Absolutely.
Then what's the problem? Why would you not want to take the same test that the public school takes?
Because that test is focused on the curriculum as taught in public schools, and we teach in a different manner. And so you wouldn't test a child on material they have not necessarily been taught. We use the norm reference test, which we talked about a great deal last week over on the House side, so I certainly understand you weren't paying attention or aware of what's going on over there. But our test, the norm reference test, have a concordance table to the STAR test. And so I distributed my son's test results, and my son's test results on our norm reference test show the equivalent STAR measure of meets or exceeds the STAR standards. And so that's our point, is that it's measuring the same things, but in accordance with how we teach it. And that's appropriate because it would be unfair to the child to test them over something different. But this shows the equivalency through these concordance tables.
So then, because there are going to be some state-funded dollars possibly going to private institutions, that's the reason why you're not interested in having any state requirements? Or, I mean, or do you would rather not have state dollars, I've heard from others, than have any state strings attached? I mean, that's what I've heard.
Well, we are interested in families accessing resources they need to find the education that they want. And private schools operate differently. They're just as accountable to parents. Parents can leave at any point, and they're accountable through their accreditation. But they are will remain private schools.
So the answer is yes,
The answer is that we are already accountable to parents.
but not to the state.
We will be we will be accountable to the state. Those ESA students, if they decide to use an ESA, they will be accountable to the state through the norm reference tests. We will have the concordance table. You will be able to see and measure the progress, and that's important to all of us. We want to make sure that we are tracking the progress of those ESA students to prove that this is a successful program, because we know it will be.
Also, TEA could remove our accreditation at any time. Our accreditation is recognized by TEA through a letter. So at any time, if we weren't meeting the standard, TEA does have the accountability to stop our accrediting commissions from having the level of accreditation we have. They've chosen not to do that since 1986, when they established this mutual agreement and asked us to take over accreditation. The state used to accredit private schools and determined that it was not appropriate and asked us to take over in 1986, which is why we do that. And that's why we feel so confident that it's going well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Madam Chair. Question. The private schools overall have programs for disabled children.
87% of private schools serve children with special needs. There are 50 schools that specifically serve only children with special needs. But what did I say, 87? I forget the number. 87.
Yeah, I think it's 87.
87% overall serve children with some kind of special needs.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Members, any other questions? Hearing none. Thank you very much. The chair now calls Ashley Ford and Renee Bottom. And is there anyone else here wishing to testify on, for, or against Committee Substitute House Bill 100? Okay. We will start with you. Are you Ashley?
Yes, hello.
Go ahead. Hello. 2 minutes, please.
Okay.
And state your name and position on the bill.
Good morning, y'all. My name is Ashley Ford. I'm the Director of Public Policy and Advocacy for the ARC of Texas. The ARC of Texas is the largest statewide organization that promotes and protects the civil rights and liberties of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The ARC of Texas is in opposition to House Bill 100. We are in opposition because of the many reasons stated by prior witnesses regarding the protections that are lost, regarding the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and I also wanted to just speak up regarding a particular provision in this bill that the ARC of Texas finds particularly concerning. There is a provision related to materials regarding state-supported living centers, or SSLCs as you know it. These are large state-run institutions for people with disabilities. We do not believe it is appropriate for schools to be referring or providing information regarding institutionalization during meetings of a special education student. We believe that local IDD authorities are the most appropriate entity for students to be receiving this information from, and we should not be calling out institutions within the education code specifically when the purpose of IDA is to really prevent institutionalization in the first place. So we urge the committee to strip out this provision because it is not appropriate for so many reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ford.
Good morning. My name's Renee Bottom, and I support the majority of the bill like so many others. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that piece on vouchers. I have a kindergartner and a pre-K, so I'm going to be part of Texas education for a very long time. Like so many schools, our school also is struggling. I became very alerted when I heard of some of the programs that were being at risk, like ESL, early reading intervention, our lab. So some of those are on the chopping block. And that's not just our school districts. School districts across the state are struggling to meet their basic needs due to inflation, like you've heard. This is urban schools, rural, small, large, it's everybody. In fact, all of you were emailed a list last week by one of my partners. Senator Betancourt, Spring Branch ISD is facing $50 million deficit. Senator Campbell, Austin ISD, $60 million deficit. Senator Paxton, Frisco ISD has a deficit. Lovejoy ISD closed schools to address budget. Senator Parker, Carroll ISD, $9 million deficit. Senator Birdwell, Grapevine Colville ISD is facing $6.3 million. Senator Middleton, Friendwood ISD, 4.1 deficit. Senator Crichton, Corpus Christi, $25 million budget shortfall. The cost of everything has gone up. Gosh, I would even implore you to perhaps increase that student allotment, or for the schools that have recapture, can we bring it, there's some language in there for a 4% discount on recapture for early repayment. Can we bring it to closer where Senator Crichton had it, closer to 10%? Is there a way to make this bill more holistic? And I think, when we're looking at the vouchers, it's got to come from one place to pay another. And that's our concern. That's all I have. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
So, Ms. Bottom, again, would you state your position on the bill?
I'm for the majority, but I'm concerned with the added language around vouchers. Can I say that?
Are you on the bill rather than saying
on the bill,
for or against? If you're happy with that, we can put that response or whatever you want us to put down.
We'll have to put for.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Members, any questions? Hearing none, thank you very much. Is there anyone else thank you for being here this morning. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against committee substitute House Bill 100? Hearing none, public testimony is now closed. Do you want to stand at recess at ease for a few minutes?
Madam Chair, while we wait, may I ask a quick question of the chairman, since I know we got a time certain for the vote?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, on the basic allotment, I believe we haven't raised the basic allotment quite some time. Is it still around $6,000 or something dollars?
Yeah, I believe with this. Yes, I believe with this legislation, it goes up around $50.
$50. And I think for most things around here, we've taken inflation into consideration. Have we taken inflation into consideration? Because my understanding is with inflation, the basic allotment should be somewhere around $7,000. But I guess, is there any discussion about taking the basic allotment up to about 7,000, which would make it appropriate, maybe we wouldn't have as much opposition to the bill.
Well, the basic allotment's not the only funding strategy, right? I mean,
Correct.
we have, just the curriculum bill alone is a $40 allotment. Another 20 added on top of that for costs. We also have safety allotments. We also have many other provisions in this bill that provide funding and in the budget.
So on the $9 billion that you mentioned earlier, I believe if LBB can help us get, you're on finance and Senator West on finance, if someone can help us get a breakdown of that new $9 billion, that would be helpful. As we move forward, I understand what you're saying in terms of there are other allotments, but I think just the basic allotments, the common denominator. My concern is that we finish this session and go back and we have people testifying that they have programs in their schools that are potentially under risk of not being funded. And so I'm concerned that we take that in consideration before we spend or vote to spend $500 million on this ESA. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Menendez. Committee on Public Education will stand at ease for a few minutes. Committee will stand at ease until 10 after 10. Thank you very much. Let the chair show that recognized Senator Bettencourt is present. Everybody, thank you. The members have many commitments over these next few days, but I know they wanted to be here for the vote, so thank you so much for indulging us that recess. Okay. We do plan on voting this bill out of committee this morning. So with that, Senator Middleton moves that House Bill 100 be reported to the Senate with the recommendation that it do not.
Subcommittee.
That it. Senator. Oh my goodness. Senator Middleton moves that House Bill 100 be reported to the Senate with the recommendation that it do not pass, but that the committee substitute adopted in lieu thereof pass and be printed, and the clerk will call the roll.
Senator Creighton.
Aye.
Senator Campbell.
Aye.
Senator Bettencourt.
Yes.
Senator Birdwell. Senator Flores.
Aye.
Senator King.
Aye.
Senator LaMantia.
No.
Senator Menendez.
No.
Senator Middleton.
Aye.
Senator Parker.
Aye.
Senator Paxton.
Aye.
Senator Springer.
Aye.
Senator West.
No.
There being 9 ayes and 3 nays, the bill passes, and the committee substitute for House Bill 100 will be reported favorably to the full Senate. Thank you. Senator Menendez, I'm used to you sitting right next to me. With that, is there any other business? With no other business coming before the Committee on Public Education, the committee stands in recess. No, recess, subject to the call of the chair. Thank you.